Hey everyone, and welcome to Project Premium Harvest. My name is Matt. In today's video, we're going to be going over MSTY, the yieldmax MSTR options income strategy ETF. We're going to make a determination. Can you retire off of this fund just from the distributions and not reinvesting the money back into it? We're going to see if that's a reality, how much money we're going to have to reinvest if that is necessary. We're going to talk about total premium, distributions rate. We're going to see if this 141.03% is accurate. Then I'm going to break everything down from a $1,000 investment to a $1 million investment, and then I'm going to break it down in a nice chart for you guys. So let's get started. As you guys can see, I have the yieldmax MSTY site pulled up. They are advertising a distribution rate of 141.03%, right? That is extremely good. And I want to show the Robinhood statistics real quick of what we're going to use as our starting point for this video. All right, guys. So I have the MSTY Robinhood chart up right now. It was incepted in February 22nd, 2024. The share price at that time was $20.38. And for all of my calculations, I'm going to use $20.38 because I want to use the data since inception, right? When it comes to the numbers that I'm going to calculate, it really depends on when you bought in at. Like if you bought in at $20.38, this fund is doing phenomenal for you. If you bought in at $44, this fund is a piece of shit, right? So it really matters, like with yieldmax, when you buy in at, and the only times you should be buying in at is whenever there's a dip, an ex-dividend date, market correction, things of that nature. So definitely that is kind of the things we need to highlight with these yieldmax funds, right? Don't ever be a part of the FOMO crowd where, oh, the fund is at 44.20. I think it's only going to keep going up. If you guys are scholars of history and these charts, that is not how the stock market works. Every time you hit a 52-week high, you're going to have some sort of correction. And that is the same with these yieldmax funds. So as I said, we're going to start all of our calculations of the buy-in share price for the $1,000 to $1 million investment with $20.38. Now let's go to the charts. All right, guys, the chart is up. So I went through each of these distributions for the last 9 months of MSTY. I have put them all on this beautiful spreadsheet for you guys. And from these 9 months of distributions, you got $27.51 per share. That is freaking phenomenal. That is by far outperforming any other yieldmax fund. Is doing a phenomenal job, right? And if you average what that payment looks like on a monthly basis, that's about $3 per share per month, right? And then if you look at that as a percentage, that's 134.9%. So a little bit off from 141%, but you know, tomato, they are using this month's data instead of the inception data. So no big deal there, right? But then what I did for you guys is I went ahead and took that monthly payment and then multiplied it by 12 so that we can see what the potential return would look like over a 12-month period, right? And over a 12-month period, this is an estimate, is going to be about $36.68 a share. Right now, Bitcoin is on a upward trend. We don't know if it's going to go higher. We don't know if it's going to crash down. But as from the last, 9 months of this fund, MSTR has been doing a phenomenal job, right? I keep regretting not investing in it, but I think my buy points would have been bad. So that's where I'm at, right? And with that 12-month estimate, that is a 179.9% distribution rate. That is almost twice your investment in 1 year. That's freaking insane. That's wild, right? So this fund has been blowing my mind. Okay, now let's talk about NAV erosion, right? From this fund, because it's been appreciating so hard, there is actually no NAV erosion, right? Depending on when you bought in at, right? I'm going to say that with a caveat every single time now because I see guys in the comment section and girls mentioning, oh, it really depends on when you bought in at. I definitely understand, but because I want to use a full data set of 9 months, we're just going to use the inception date, right? You guys can crunch your own numbers, but this is just kind of generalizing this fund. But let's go to Robinhood real quick so that we can see the proof of that. This fund has not NAV eroded, it actually appreciated. Yep, so as you guys can see, this fund is up 41.07%, which is about $8.37 a share. That is freaking phenomenal. That is outperforming the S&P 500, right? And you've been getting paid a distribution, which is wild. Cool. Let's go back to the chart. And so I had to delete these bottom two sections of net because usually whenever there's a fund, it has NAV erosion. And because there's no NAV erosion here, we didn't need to calculate it, right? But let's talk about return of capital. So let me scroll over the screen here. So return of capital is an interesting beast, right? That basically means that the fund itself, or yieldmax, is taking your money and paying you back with it. So you don't pay taxes on that money. And there's a certain percentage each month, depending on if you had to pull money from the share price to pay you back, if you're going to have return of capital, or you're going to have to pay the net distribution payment at ordinary income, right? So what does this mean? Basically, yieldmax comes out with a form called a 19A1, right? I'm going to show it real quick. It is this form right here on the screen. And it's going to tell you how much you're going to pay in net distributions, what taxes you don't have to pay on return of capital. So yieldmax does a terrible job keeping these up to date. The last one for MSTY was created in October 25th. It's January, and we haven't come out with new numbers yet, or at least we don't even see December's numbers, right? So it's hard to calculate the total return of capital for these funds because yieldmax does a bad job with its administrative role. That was my little rant, but let's kind of look into the details here of what we're looking for. So there's two sections here, right? You have this month's payments, so whatever happened in October, and then you have the fiscal year dates. So if you want to figure out the return of capital from that specific month, you just look at the fiscal or the current distribution for that month, right? So for the month of October, the estimated net investment is 100%. All right, let me make sure I say this correctly. Of this distribution, 100% is net. So that means you're going to have to pay ordinary income for this distribution. There was no return of capital, so there was no tax advantage to this distribution, right? So that means that your guys are going to have to pay for October. You're going to have to pay 100% of this number at ordinary income level, so your normal tax bracket. But if we look at the cumulative, we look at how much distribution is at net levels and how much distribution is at return of capital. So if we look at these numbers, how much net distributions you're going to have to pay at ordinary incomes is 49.43%. That's about $9.88. And then for the return of capital, you're not going to have to pay taxes on $10 of that distribution. So let me go back to the Excel spreadsheet. So these numbers are up until April to October. So it's not the full 9 months. So this number might not necessarily be accurate. It's just a estimate from what we currently have. So roughly we can imagine that you're going to have to pay taxes on 50% of the distribution at ordinary income levels, right? So before knowing that cumulative return part on the 19A1 forms, I went through every single one of them and annotated the data. And the data that I came up with is exactly the same that yieldmax came up with as the one time that our data lines up is how much you're going to have to pay taxes on. Cool. For MSTY, from these, 7 payments, right? 7 distribution payments they had data for, or they had the tax documentation for. You're not going to have to pay taxes on $10 of that distribution, but then for $9.88 of the net return, you have to pay that at ordinary income. Let's go over to the chart and then we're going to discuss that. All right, looking at this beautiful chart, we're just going to go over some of the major statistics here. So if we are going over MSTY, that is the ETF we're reviewing for this retirement video. The purchase price is going to be at $20.38. You guys can put whatever you want in this spreadsheet or whenever you guys calculate data. I'm using $20.38. The dividend yield, because we made an estimate for another 3 months from the distribution that has been paid out, that net dividend yield is 179.9%. The net monthly dividend is $3 per share, and the net yearly is about $36.68 per share. And as we discussed with the return of capital conversation, we're going to have to pay taxes on 49.4% of the distribution at ordinary income levels. And I'm going to break that down once we get to this tax section here. And it makes more sense with like a bigger investment, like $1 million, right? But let's go through this, right? So for a $1,000 MSTY investment, you guys are going to own 49 shares. For a $10,000 investment, 490, $25,000. You're going to own 1,226 shares. The $50,000 investment, you're going to have 2,453 shares. The $100,000 investment, 4,907. And for the $1 million investment, we're going to have 49,068 shares. That is a lot. And if you can already see my spreadsheet, it looks pretty nice for the monthly income. But any hoozle, everyone's at different parts of their investment journey into these funds. I'm personally not invested in MSTY, and every time I see these numbers, I want to get invested into it, but I just don't know how crypto is going to play out in the long term, right? Hate me in the comment section. All right, cool. So for that $1,000 investment, your monthly income is $149, and your yearly income is $1,799. And because we have to pay 49.4% of this distribution in taxes, so that we come up with that number, and then this number, $889, that's taxed at ordinary income levels. So if you had a $1,000 investment, you're going to have to pay $88.91 in taxes, right? So for the $10,000 investment, the monthly income is going to be roughly almost $1,500, and over a year time frame, that's $17,998. Once we take into consideration the net distribution percentage we're going to have to pay taxes on, we basically cut that in half. And then because this $8,891 fits in this 10% tax bracket of up to $11,000, we're going to have to pay 10% taxes on this $8,891. So that's, 10% is pretty simple. It's $889.10. Moving on to the $25,000 investment, the monthly income is going to be $3,749, and the yearly income is going to be $44,995.09, because we take into consideration the return of capital and the net distribution. Pretty much only have to pay taxes on $22,000, and of that $22,000, we look at our different tax brackets, right? So $22,000 fits into $11,000 one time. So to max out that bracket up to $11,000 is $1,100. Anything remaining from this $11,000 up to $22,000, that is going to get taxed at 12%. And so that remainder is $1,347.30. Moving on to that $50,000 investment, that monthly income is going to be $7,499.26 over a year period. That's $89,990.19, right? We take into considerations the net distribution with considerations to return of capital. So that's $44,455.15, right? Up to $11,000, we pay 10% tax bracket. And because this $44,455 just squeezes in here, we're going to pay $12,000 on the difference between $11,000 to that $44,455. So that is 12% tax bracket. So that's going to be $4,014.61. Cool. Now we get to the fun part, the bigger numbers, right? So for that $100,000 investment, the monthly income is $14,998. Wow, that is more than my day job, right? The yearly income is $179,980.37. We take into consideration the net distributions and return of capital. We only have to pay taxes on $88,910 at ordinary income. So for that first $11,000, it's going to be pretty much same across the board. It's going to be taxed at 10%. We already see the number, 1,100. Now, 88,000 fits into this 11,000 of 44,000 mark. So anything in between, that's going to be taxed at 12%. So that number is $4,047. And anything from the 44,000 to that $95,000 part, or in our case, it's only going to go up to 88,000. That's going to get taxed at 22%. So that difference, you're basically paying $9,720. And in total, for a $100,000 investment over a year period, you're paying $14,867 in taxes, right? And I forgot to mention the $50,000 mark. The total taxes for that is $5,114.61. Lastly, let's go to the $1 million investment where you're making a distribution of 179%. This is absolutely wild, right? So look at that monthly income. Holy moly, $149,985.28 of monthly income. That is absolutely freaking insane. That is wild, right? And the yearly income for that number is almost $1.8 million, right? So the taxes for here is going to be a little bit crazy, right? So taking into consideration the return of capital and net distributions we have to pay taxes on, at 1.8 million, 49.40% is $889,103.04. right? And basically it's the same concept here. We pretty much maxed out every single tax bracket up until we get to that 37%. And after 37%, anything above, you know, $578,125, that is just taxed at 37%. So if you guys have $1 million into MSTY, you guys can be making $1.8 million. And from that $1.8 million, you would only have to pay taxes on $289,299.70. So that's how that works. All right, so these numbers are pretty cool, and we're going to make the determination. Can you retire off of this fund, right? Just strictly looking at these numbers, absolutely you can, but it depends on when you bought in at, right? So if you bought in at, you know, $44 a share, and then now it's trading back down to like $26 a share, you pretty much lost like a third of your investment, and you're probably not too happy right now. But like I said, if you invest into inception date, with not many people do, I just use that number as, you know, a starting point, right? Everyone's numbers and their entry points are different. I was just using that as a data point, right? That's very important with these yield max funds, is the entry when you get in. Ex-dividend date. Is it a downward trending market? Is Bitcoin doing good? So those are things you have to take into consideration before investing in these funds. However, looking at the raw data and the raw distribution, this is freaking phenomenal, right? And I'm going to throw this into a compound calculator. I'm only going to do the $100,000 investment and $1 million investment just for fun's sake. So let's go over there real quick. All right, one more important thing I didn't mention here is, what does the tax rate actually look like? So the way we determine the actual tax rate for your investment is we took the amount of taxes that you're going to have to pay, and then we divide that into the money you made. So in this circumstance, dividing $289,299 into 1.8 million, that is about a 16% tax rate. So we're going to use that number in the dividend calculator. So let's go over there. All right, guys, so I'm keeping the numbers here very basic, right? So we're doing MSTY, right? We're doing about 49,000 shares. The share price, we're let's do that, $20.38, right? Annual contribution, we're going to do $0 because we're in retirement. We don't want to add any more money, right? We just want to live off of this initial investment, right? Cool. So that tax rate is at 16.07%, as we calculated a minute ago. The initial annual dividend yield, we're doing 179%, which is wild, but that's what the number is. We're going to use it. The expected annual dividend amount increase, we're going to keep that at 0. We're just going to keep everything else status quo. The annual share price appreciation, we're also going to keep that at 0, right? I want this to just be very, you know, unbiased. Sure, I could have put the 41%, but I don't think that helps us here. I just kind of want to lowball it and show what these numbers look like. So let's do investment over a 20-year period. Let's do it. Jesus Christ. 100,000, million, billion, trillion, gazillion. That makes no sense. So let's actually put the share price, 40%. See if that changes. Okay, so we'll just actually add the share price in there, because if it's at $0, that number just was fucking way too unrealistic. But okay, so cool. This number is more realistic. So, I mean, but it's still like $56 billion after 20 years. I don't know if that's true or not, but it is $1 million investment. So let's do a $100,000 investment. So let's grab one of these zeros away. So we're only going to invest, 4,900 shares instead of 49,000. So let's calculate that. So that number is a little bit more realistic. If you have a $100,000 investment, it's still like $5 billion. That's still crazy. Well, I guess that's what the number is, right? I mean, that's the numbers we came up with. That's what's currently being showed out. So maybe I should actually invest in MSTY now. All right, guys, that wraps up this specific video. The whole intent was, can you retire off of MSTY? The answer that I'm coming up with is absolutely, just depends on when you buy in at. And it's just also your bullishness on Bitcoin itself. Do you think it's going to go up? Do you think it's going to go down in the near term? That's a very key indicator as if to why you should invest in this fund. I'm always on the fence with crypto. And so for me, I like to stay away from crypto like it's the plague. However, I probably could have made more money in my life if I just would have bit the bullet, right? So going back to the main point of this video, it's that all of the distribution you're making, you're using that for retirement. You can either go on vacation, go to the beach, fix a car, have a hobby, passion project, right? That's the whole point of it. Of course, we can talk about the compounding. That's important. I definitely highlight it here a little bit with that dividend calculator, but the whole point is, can you live off of this money, right? That's a yes, just depends on when you bought in at. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Is this a fund I should invest in? Is this a fund that you should invest in? If you're invested into this fund, from the numbers that I came up with, is it what you have observed in your accounts as well? Please let me know. Love you guys out there. Have fun. Enjoy your journey. Until next time, I will be coming out with my weekly portfolio update on the next 24 hours to 48 hours. So be on the lookout for that. Cool. Love you guys. I'm out.